Good Wednesday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. The Browns getting ready for a game against the Chargers, coming cross country to play the Browns at First Energy Stadium. Important game for the Browns, trying to get to 3-2, trying to get over 500, trying to get things rolling again in the right direction. Some news from out in Berea today, some roster movement. So Greedy Williams was designated for return from the injured list. Richard LeCount signed to the practice squad. In addition, it looks like the Browns are looking into potentially signing tight end Pharaoh Brown as well. If he passes his physical, they are expected to sign former tight end Pharaoh Brown. Let's welcome in Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. And Tim, all good news as far as Greedy Williams. We'll see how quickly they can get him acclimated back in there. Anything the Browns can do to help out that secondary is a good thing at this point in time.
Absolutely, and we know Greedy Williams, like he will at least provide depth, and I think that's pretty important to have at that cornerback position, especially considering what's coming up in the next few weeks. Obviously, the Chargers coming up on Sunday. Very good passing attack. 2 weeks from now, Baltimore, you need all the speedy defenders you could possibly have to try and contain Lamar Jackson. Then a week later is the Monday night game against Cincinnati. Then you got Buffalo on the schedule, Miami, Tampa Bay, and that's all before Deshaun Watson comes back. So obviously they're gonna need all hands on deck to, not only to fix what's ever going on in the secondary, not just from a communication standpoint, but to have as many good, capable bodies out there who are capable of covering. So it's good for the Browns and good for Greedy Williams that he's back out on that field.
All right, some more good news as we take a look at some practice. And Myles Garrett and Taven Bryant both going through the individual drill section of the Browns practice out in Berea today. So that's a good step towards potentially getting them back on the field. Jadeveon Clowney did not go through those drills. So Garrett, Bryant, hopefully getting closer to potentially being back on the field. Jadeveon Clowney not ready to do so yet. And again, Tim, they really missed Clowney and Bryant, and as well as Myles Garrett. That defensive line, they need to get that corrected in a hurry.
Without question, and obviously, you saw the effects of just without being what that defensive line looked like without those three stars. I mean, by the end of that third quarter and into the fourth, Atlanta ran the football at will. That 10-play drive, that was all runs. Everybody knew what was coming, and the Browns still just looked powerless to stop it. Whether it was just Atlanta kind of cranking up the physicality, or they kind of understood what the Browns were working with, considering they were shorthanded. Smart coaching on the part of Arthur Smith to exploit that and really just kind of run the football at will, because that's when I think that game changed. But, getting Myles Garrett back is going to be just simply massive, because we saw how much of a problem the Browns had manufacturing a pass rush in Atlanta, a bunch of missed sacks. With Justin Herbert coming in on Sunday, they're going to need all the help they can get. It's good for the Browns that Rashawn Slater, the left tackle, will not be able to play, obviously out for the rest of the season. So it's a boost that, if Garrett's able to play, that maybe it's not going to be as easy for the Chargers to protect him without shifting guys around and creating different types, scheming different protections without their talented left tackle there.
The other thing, the Browns defense has allowed the most points in the fourth quarter by a wide margin. First three quarters, they're top 10 as far as points allowed. Fourth quarter, worst by a lot. Kevin Stefanski talked about what's going on in that fourth quarter.
Obviously, you're trying to play 4 quarters of football, offense, defense, special teams. And unfortunately, we've had some issues in the fourth quarter that have led to points. And think back to week 1, think back to week 2, where we unfortunately gave up big plays that really can't happen and shouldn't happen. I think we've gone a long way in working on those type of things. So I think we just got to continue to play sound football, get lined up, number one, and play the defense that's executed.
In the second half in Atlanta?
Yeah, I thought, prior to that long drive, it was keeping them in check. And I want to give them credit. Obviously, that's a good run offense. So prior to that, doing a nice job. They got theirs, which is going to happen. But it's always a combination of things. It's always one guy here, one guy there. We could always, you always question, could I have put him in a better position on the play call? All those things. So there's not one answer to that.
And Tim, that's pretty much the answer to everything that woes the defense of the Browns. If it was one answer to it, they'd fix it and be done with it. It's multiple things always.
Yeah, and I mean, football's so much more fluid than I think, we want to give it credit for. It's never always just one thing. It could be one thing that leads to another thing, and another thing, kind of like a domino effect of sorts. And, the fact that they didn't have Myles Garrett, Jadeveon Clowney, Taven Bryan available in Atlanta led to the run defense kind of collapsing in that final 20 minutes or so of the game. And then they had to overload on that, which led to obviously the pass, the big play to Olamide Zaccheaus, and then the flag by Denzel Ward got it landed in the field goal territory, and obviously Young Hui Koo hit the game-winning field goal. So it's a lot of things that combine together. And in a sport like football, when you play defense, all 11 guys have to be on point to really have to have a good chance to make something happen. Occasionally you get a play of individual brilliance, but you need all 11 guys to be on the same page. And as we've seen throughout the first 4 games of the season, that really hasn't happened too often, especially in the fourth quarter when we know finishing matters so much in football. You have to be at your best in the fourth quarter because of how much parity there is in the league now. So the fact that they haven't been able to get it done in the fourth quarter, that's a big reason they've lost those 2 games that they've lost. They need to be better in that, figure out whatever issues going on, whether it's communication or guys just not playing well, and they got to find a way to get it fixed.
All right, Bleacher Report. Every team's biggest early season disappointment. And for the Browns, they're going to go with defensive coordinator Joe Woods. And Tim, you see the delineation you've got, and Garrett and Clowney didn't play. 28th in ESPN's defensive efficiency. And that unit has been disappointing. So I guess to say Joe Woods has been disappointing would be fair. It should not be a bottom 5, a bottom 10. It should be a top 10 defense with the talent that they have, and it just has not been. And it's been delineated. It's one of the worst in the fourth quarter. It is the worst in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at all those issues that are together, I kind of pivot towards coaching. That can be kind of where the problem is. And obviously, we've seen that Joe Woods just has not done what everybody expected he was going to do based on how the defense had played the second half of last season when they looked like a unit that was top 10 caliber. And obviously this season, not even close to that. You look at the blown coverages they've had, the issue of creating a pass rush outside of bringing just 4 guys, the problems, guys like Denzel Ward have had in coverage, the inability to get takeaways on a consistent basis with this type of talent. Those things shouldn't be happening. And the fact that when it comes to the communication issues, this is year 3 of the scheme. Most of these guys have been playing together for 2 years. If there's a communication issue that's still going on, that's got to be on the coaches to get that figured out. What's going on with the communication? How can it be better? Kevin Stefanski talks about trying to put his players in better situations. I think that's got to go down as well to how can we get our players the plays in better? How can we communicate them more efficiently so that these breakdowns don't happen? Because it was another one again on Sunday that ended up proving pivotal and helped cost them the game in Atlanta. So those got to get cleaned up. And I think it falls right at the feet of Joe Woods 4 weeks in, and there's still some of these issues that have been present since the start of the season.
Yeah, and I've been hesitant to blame the defensive coordinator. It's got to be shared between Joe Woods and the players. Players still have to go out and play, and there are guys that are expected to produce that aren't producing. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns defense.
Hello. I wanted to convey some information that I feel is relatively important to what the Browns defense is doing. As all fans, I'm unhappy with the way the season has started, particularly because we should really be 4-0. But the no-pressure defense and the pressure that they put on Myles Garrett when he's playing is substantial. They rely on him on double and triple teams to get pressure on the quarterback without any help. TJ Watt, for instance, for the Steelers, led the league in sacks last year, but they blitz and they bring other people, and that relieves some of the pressure, and he has untouched contact with the quarterback, and I don't think we're doing enough of that, and I've said that for years, that Joe Woods is not utilizing his player personnel correctly. They have 9 players in the top 10 of their positions on the team. I'm assuming some of those are, at least half of those are on defense, and the pressure that we're not getting on the quarterback, all winning teams seem to put pressure on the quarterback. So I'm just frustrated with the non-pressure, and I wish the Browns would really look at someone else for defensive coordinator. Wink Martindale left the Baltimore and went to the Giants, and now their defense is playing substantially better than they had in the previous years. So your opinion on that, and I thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
And Tim, we touched on it a little bit. Again, I am the last guy that's fire this guy, fire that guy. Defense has to play better. At some point in time, if the defense doesn't start playing better pretty darn soon, you got to start looking at those kind of things.
Yeah, and I mean, again, it comes down to just, philosophy versus the players you have. And when I look at this roster, I look at what's on defense, particularly, I've said this before, that with guys like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah and Grant Delpit in particular, those are guys that play extremely well when they can play downhill, when you can kind of initiate them in blitzing situations and have them attack the line of scrimmage more often. And it just doesn't seem like that's happening nearly enough. And that goes back to the idea of putting players in the best position to be successful. And by and large, there's still time in the season. We saw that the defense made a big turnaround in the second half of the season, particularly after, ironically enough, the Chargers game a year ago, which blown coverages cost them that game. But I look at what's happened since for the start of the season. Those are the things that should have been corrected in training camp. Those are the things that should have been corrected, way back, so that this didn't happen again, so that this looks like a defense that has played together. It looks like a group that has experience playing next to each other. In this season, it doesn't really look like that, and that's bizarre when you consider the continuity on this side of the football. Most of these guys have been here for at least a full season, and at times it doesn't look like it. And that, I think, falls on, they got to communicate better, and the plan has got to be better and in place. And it just doesn't seem like Joe Woods has really tried to instill an aggressive enough scheme that I think fits the style of his players. And, in this day and age, you have to coach, I think, to the strength of your team and not the other way around.
Yeah, and you know what? There needs to be a sense of urgency with that defensive side of the football, because things are going to get a whole lot tougher with the teams that are coming in. Tim Bielik and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out, other side of the break, look a little bit at the offensive side of the ball. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns and the end of games.
How you doing? It's Tony Frost, lifetime Cleveland Browns fan, frequent caller. Just want to say this to our coach, Kevin Stefanski. You're an excellent, brilliant offensive mind. And sometimes it's okay to get off of the sheet that you hold up to your face in the fourth quarter and just scrap it and just give the ball to Nick, give the ball to Kareem, run a couple screens, and just close the game out. Everything doesn't have to go according to plan in the fourth quarter. The first three quarters, you set the tone with your card there that you hold up to your face. Fourth quarter, the tone has been set. Let's wear them down and finish the game. The Chargers have the worst run defense, one of the worst run defenses in the NFL. Let's go out there and kick butt every week with the run, please, until Deshaun comes back. Can't put the game in Jacoby Brissett's hand. We know this. Go Browns. Woof, woof.
And always appreciate the voicemails. Tim, the Browns have run the ball as much as anybody. The only team that's run the ball more than them is the Eagles. And of the Eagles' running attempts, I think they've run it like 8-9 times more than the Browns. 53 of them belong to Jalen Hurts, their quarterback. So the Browns are running the ball. But to his point, they did try to throw screens, and Jacoby Brissett was unable to, execute them. I agree, though. Jacoby Brissett is not the quarterback that you want to put the game in his hands in the fourth quarter and say, go win this one.
No, you want him, I think, to complement what's going on in the offense around him. And I do think you have to give Atlanta's defense credit for just the way they snuffed out those screens. I mean, they pretty much knew every time a screen was coming, and they were pretty prepared for it in some way or the other, either having the receiver covered or making it so Jacoby couldn't get the throw out in time to those receivers on the screen passes. So they did a good job of taking that away. But when it comes to the fourth quarter, I think you still have to have balance. With the absence of Deshaun Watson and all the things he can do, I think you have to have some balance, because in the fourth quarter, teams are going to do everything they can to take away your strength. And for the Browns, that strength is running the football, and they almost going to dare the Browns and force them to have Jacoby Brissett beat them. And Jacoby's not that kind of quarterback, and that's okay, because there's only about 7 of those guys in the league who are the guys who can win in spite of, what else is going on around them. So I look at those fourth quarter situations, obviously if they're ahead, they're going to lean on the run game a lot more, but you also have to have balance, because if you don't have balance, you're just slamming the ball into the line 3 straight downs. You're not always going to get the first down. Not every time. Nick Chubb's not going to break a tackle every single time. Kareem Hunt's not going to be able to find that lane every single time. Once in a while, you have to throw at some point to try and make a defense respect it. Otherwise, you're just creating a lot of problems for yourself as far as an offense is concerned.
All right, I know coming out tomorrow you're going to have your quarterback rankings. Give us a little preview. Where's Jacoby Brissett going to be in those?
Yeah, so every week, every Thursday morning, I have a ranking of the 32 starting quarterbacks every week based pretty much on their performances. And I've had Jacoby Brissett in the top 20 for the last couple of weeks. He was all the way up to 15 a week ago. This week, I got him sliding down a bit to 18. And obviously, he came off 2 very good games against the Jets and the Steelers, but obviously in Atlanta, something was missing. He just wasn't able to find that last play in the red zone. He and the Browns they weren't able to make the play when it needed to be made. You look at that one throw to Donovan Peoples-Jones that Brissett overthrew earlier in the game that was along the right sideline. Could have had a big gain, possibly a touchdown. He did have a couple nice passes, including the one to Peoples-Jones that got him to the 1-yard line. Of course, a missed fumble, a fumble that was overruled by a stop before progress and a penalty kind of short-circuited things. Then you look at that final drive, a sack, and then an interception on back-to-back plays. The plays just weren't there. He just didn't make those plays like he had the previous 2 weeks. And I think he's a guy that he needs the guys around him playing well to get the job done. He got that in the previous 2 games. He had Amari Cooper and David Njoku playing great. In Atlanta, Cooper was tied up by A.J. Terrell, who I thought did a great job on him. Njoku had that fumble, and just all those different things need to be going up at a higher level for Brissett to be able to be successful. Still been pretty good, I think, about as good as you could expect for the Browns, but Sunday was a reminder that he does still have some limitations.
Yeah, without question. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns offense.
Hi, this is Ken Ski from Orlando, Florida, a transplant from Lorain County. Just an observation on the Browns. I know we're over dissecting every single play, but that first play, I have no problem. They moved the ball really nice that first drive. So at that point, I had no problem with them being aggressive and going for it. But the thing I don't get is the play they called, obviously. Why don't they line up and fake a handoff into the interior and then hit one of the receivers on a slant, or maybe even just hand it off? I just don't get the play calling sometimes. I think Stefanski overthinks it in certain scenarios or situational aspects of the game. Just my comment. Thanks. Enjoy your show.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. I kind of was thinking the same thing in watching some of the calls on Sunday, at least. And again, play calling is one of those things. When it works, you're a genius. When it doesn't, it's a terrible play call.
Definitely. I mean, we're talking about Kevin Stefanski. He's done a good job working with what he has had this year, and they've done a decent job. And I think that's a fair criticism, I think, through 2+ years, 30+ games as a head coach with Kevin Stefanski, is that there are times when it seems like he overthinks it, like that caller was saying. I look at, particularly that end around the David Njoku. I thought that was a bizarre call at the time. And then when it comes to the fourth down calls, and I think that was an issue at times a year ago, particularly in the game against the Bears, you can go for it on a fourth down, it's perfectly fine, but you got to have some calls in mind that you really have confidence that they're going to work. And Sunday it didn't, especially that fourth down near the goal line. I do think Atlanta did a great job defensively on that play, and we have to remember there is another team out there, and I thought, at least on that particular play, they did a good job of neutralizing what they thought was coming. But you gotta find a way to come up with better plays for those fourth down situations, for those must-have situations, and be able to execute those. Now, having Deshaun Watson back should make it a lot easier, create more of a margin for error. But, maybe in that situation, even running the football would have been an interesting call in there, because we saw that Atlanta was having some trouble at times stopping the run. But again, I didn't really have a problem with that fourth down call, but the decision to go for it, I should say, but the play call in that situation, I think could have been much better.
Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll look ahead a little bit to the Chargers matchup. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Tim Bielik from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about Kevin Stefanski.
This is Lloyd, my Browns, and also Kevin Stefanski. I don't want this coach to be on the hot seat because, honestly, this is the best team we've had on the field since, 2007? We have a top-ranked rushing attack. We have a defense that's good, just needs some tweaking, and we got some healthy bodies that need to come back. So everybody who's trying to give up on Kevin Stefanski and Joe Woods, we have one of the best lockdown corners in the league, along with the best D-line in the league right now, but they're all coming back healthy. And we have one of the best offensive lines and the best two-headed monster in the backfield. And also, I like Jacoby Brissett. He got wide out. He got a little bit greedy. I get that. But guess what? So far, this team is playing good. So I wouldn't put them on the hot seat. Just keep playing. Stick to what we know best. Run the ball. Thank you, and go Browns.
All right, as always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Tim, I do not think Kevin Stefanski's on the hot seat, and I don't think he will be this year. If things don't go well this year, maybe next year. But part of the problem with the Browns, while they haven't had sustained success, they keep changing regimes.
Yeah, and I mean, I look at Kevin Stefanski and the way the Browns have played this year. I don't think that offense has been an issue. I think he's done a good job with what he's had. he's a coach that hasn't had an elite quarterback. He's had 2 seasons of Baker Mayfield, and now he's got a backup quarterback in there in Jacoby Brissett, and doing a fairly good job with what he's got to work with. Could it be better? Yes, but it could also definitely be way worse. I think he's put Brissett in good positions these first 4 games of the season. They've been in position to win all 4 of these games, but you look at the Jets game, massive coverage breakdown, the special teams issue led to a collapse that, was 1 in about 2,000 something chance to happen. And then obviously in Atlanta, you have, that late drive, another blown coverage, the run defense kind of collapsing in the fourth quarter, and then Jacoby Brissett having the sack and the interception. So I look at what the Browns have, obviously with Brissett playing instead of Watson, they're shorthanded. They were shorthanded defensively a week ago, but right now I look at that defense, and that defense is just not playing up to its level. There's guys on that team, guys on that defense we know are quality players, but it's just not showing through right now on that side of the football. And that was the group that going into the season, we all said needed to be strong, needed to be a strength of the team to get them to 3-1 or 4-0 in the first 4 games. It hasn't been, and that's a big reason why the Browns are sitting at 2-2.
Yeah, I would agree with you wholeheartedly. John Johnson, one of those defensive guys from his safety position, on what he sees looking at the Chargers quarterback, Justin Herbert, who's coming to town with the Chargers.
He has all the physical traits of a great quarterback. I said this before, you just look at him behind the center. He's like 6'9" behind the center, and he's just a big arm, physical guy. But I think, his coaches put him in a good position to make plays. They're not going to ask of him something that he can't do, and he's just been taking advantage of it. But like I said, I think it's just his physical presence has helped him out a lot.
There's a secondary who's had the early season struggles here. Just when you go into a game like this, do you have to be even more alert, or I don't know, even communicate even more going up against a guy like that can burn you just with one throw? Yeah,
I think they're number 1 in passing. So, if it's a game that you got to get up for and be locked in for, it's this one. And I think, that's the emphasis for our room, especially. We've had some flashes of good things, but I think each and every play we got to be locked in, or we are going to get torched, because they've been doing it to anybody, just dating back to last year too. So if it's a game that, we need our best effort from the secondary, is this one.
And I couldn't agree with John Johnson more. Now it's not Joe Flacco, it's not Marcus Mariota, it's one of the elite guys.
Yeah, and this is the part of the schedule where things don't get easy. Obviously, 2 weeks from now, Lamar Jackson, Halloween, Joe Burrow, and then right before you get Deshaun Watson back, Josh Allen, Tom Brady back-to-back. So obviously, this is where, this defense has to show its capability. And I think, John Johnson's on point on there in that press conference basically saying they need to be ready to go and they need to be ready for anything, because Justin Herbert's one of those guys who he doesn't need to go on an 8 or 9 play drive. It could be a 2-play drive where he hits a big pass, 50, 60 yards for a touchdown or something like that. We saw it obviously in Los Angeles a year ago. He took full advantage of blown coverages, but he also made some really tremendous throws in that game. So you got to be, if you're a defense, you got to be on point to even try to slow him down, let alone stop him, because that's so difficult to do when it comes to a great quarterback like Justin Herbert. Obviously, they know firsthand what happened when you're not fully prepared. If there was a time for this defense to really come together, put those communication issues to bed, and really start to flash that top 10 potential that everybody said they had at the beginning of the season, I think it has to start on Sunday, because I don't think the Browns win if they don't get a great performance out of that defense.
Yeah, I would agree. You can do everything right, and Justin Herbert can still end up beating you. If you have breakdowns, it's not going to be pretty. All right, CBS Sports, Pete Prisco picking every game for the Browns and the Chargers. He has the Chargers winning this one by a score of 27-21. They play well on the road historically with them. It is a team going from West Coast for a 1 o'clock Eastern time zone kickoff, which is always a challenge. Man, I don't know about you, Tim. I think if they hold the Chargers 27 points, they have a pretty good chance at winning this, just because I think they're going to be able to run the ball.
Yeah, and that's going to be the trick with this game. Is it feels, in a weird way, it kind of feels like a trap, because everybody knows the Chargers have one of the worst run defenses in the NFL, and the Browns should dominate time of possession in this game. But this is one of those games where it feels like that won't matter at all. And it's because, like I said before, Justin Herbert and this Chargers passing game, they don't need time of possession to win the game. They can go for these quick strike touchdown drives and really make it so, even if the Browns had the ball for twice as long as the Chargers, it could be utterly meaningless based on, just his explosive ability. And you do bring up a good point about West Coast teams coming over to the East Coast being an issue. Obviously, flying from LA to Houston is a much shorter flight than Los Angeles to Cleveland, so maybe that plays into it a little bit. And the Browns are obviously a much more talented team than the Houston Texans are. So there are things playing in the Browns' favor, but just like with anything else, this is the game where they need to bring that consistency on both sides of the football. They need to be able to commit to the run game as much as they have, and don't get caught up in the idea of trying to keep up with Justin Herbert. If they get caught up in that philosophy, especially with that Chargers defense with Khalil Mack being out there, he's going to be a tough guy to kind of contain. If they're dropping back to pass a lot, that means bad things are happening against this Chargers team. So they just need to play their game as much. That's pretty much the key in this one, as much as any of these 11 games they have with Deshaun Watson. This is the one where if they follow their blueprint and they play defense, their best defensive game of the season, they got a good shot. They got a fairly decent shot to win, but I would still pick the Chargers to win.
All right. Before I let you go, we're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one kind of about the whole Browns offense.
Dave, I would like to address a couple of statements and issues brought up this week. Statement number one, we cannot maintain 80s style football of us running the football all the time. Yes, I agree to this point. The Browns went out to get Deshaun Watson to hopefully make us a complete team. But until he starts playing, we have to worry about getting victories now, so he can hopefully do us some good when he's able to start playing. So until then, we must rely on our strength, which is the offensive line, Nick Chubb, and Kareem Hunt, and use them all together in different formations and schemes to pick up yards, TDs, and hopefully victories. Second statement is going for it on fourth down and field goal range. Yes, I would love to play aggressive football, but we do not have the personnel right now to make this happen consistently. We do have a competent field goal kicker. For right now, any points are great and hopefully add up to victories until we are a full package of players and are in position to play 2022 football.
And Tim, I get both sides of this argument as far as the reason you go for it on fourth down when you're inside the 5, you feel like you need points, you go and you get them. And that's why they went for it on fourth down inside the 5. I'll listen to the conversation about taking the points when they're there. I get both sides of it. And I probably would err on the side of taking points just because points on the scoreboard are always a good thing.
Yeah, but I can't. This is where I really go back to that fourth down. The one everybody talks about is everybody saying that's why they lost the game. First off, it's the first drive of the game. There's really no high leverage situations that come out of the first drive in the game in my mind. And second, the reason you go for it on fourth down is say you don't get it. Say, in that situation, obviously it was an incomplete pass. They turn over on downs. Yes, you don't get any points out of it, but you also pin the other team back in their own end of the field. And in theory, it obviously, as we all know in football, it's far harder to score on drives of 90 plus yards than it when you're starting back at your own 5 or your 6 yard line versus starting at the 25 yard line. So let's say the Browns kick the field goal and it's 3-0. Atlanta on that drive after the missed fourth down went 84 yards to kick a field goal. If Atlanta gets the ball back on the kickoff, they're at the 25 yard line probably. They would need to go 9 fewer yards to score 4 more points. So instead of it being a 3-0 Atlanta lead, it would have been a 7-3 Atlanta lead. So you're talking adding a point and taking the field goal out of the equation for the Browns to try and tie or take the lead. And of course, this obviously doesn't happen because I'm sure there's a butterfly effect where one thing changes another thing. But say the Njoku fumble still happens, Atlanta scores a touchdown on the next drive, it's 14-3 instead of 10-0. Again, 2-score game, and you've eliminated the field goal out of it. So again, you're chasing extra points in that situation. So it's not, to me, it's not always about can you make it. It's what happens if you don't get it, because that's the reason in that situation where, in theory, if you go for it and you don't get it, you feel like you should be able to at least win the battle with field position. But considering the Browns defense did not get the job done and really just let Atlanta march down the field in the opening drive, that's why it looked worse than it would have under normal circumstances. Analytics to me is about, what happens a majority of the time. There's always going to be outliers. There's always going to be anomalies. But what happens in the 80% of the time when something is supposed to happen a certain way? What happens then? That's what analytics to me is.
Tim Bielik, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Nobody knew they were going to have math today. Sorry about that, folks. We were giving you math on Sports4CLE. Tim, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Great stuff, man.
I apologize for the math lecture, but I do appreciate you guys having me today. Have a nice day.
All right, Tim Bielik, make sure you check him out, cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. Actually, very valid points. Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast straight ahead. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. We're going to head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about the Browns' season to date.
Hey guys, this is Clayton out of Locust, North Carolina. I'm a big fan of the Browns, but the loss that we had was a really horrible loss. My question to you is that I am seeing a pattern when I say we win one, we lose one. We win one, we lose one. And if the track record continues, then that would mean that the Chargers, even though that would be unlikely, the Chargers we should what? But yeah, I just want to get y'all's thoughts. Something that I'm seeing here, but we really need to get Myles Garrett back really bad, or we need something going on with Joe Woods' defense because it's horrible right now. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, Browns have been consistently inconsistent to this point, I think, is what we're getting at.
I'd say that's fair to say. You look week one, you didn't have much of a passing game with Jacoby Brissett. Weeks 2 and 3, that picked up. Week 4, Jacoby Brissett, threw the ball pretty well, but all of a sudden now Amari Cooper was kind of phased out. Some other guys were involved. You're certainly looking for better balance on the offensive side of the ball. There's going to be people who say you want to run the ball more, and, I can kind of understand the thought process there. But when you have players like David Njoku and Amari Cooper, and I think Jacoby Brissett has played better than, most would have expected to this point, you're looking for better there. Defensively, look, last week is tough. It really is. But, when you're down 3 out of 4 starters on your defensive line, when you're going through your first game where you're transitioning to a new middle linebacker, making the calls, and you have a team that really only had one calling card in that game Sunday, the Falcons, as far as running the ball, it was a recipe to just basically get it, when you take one on the chin on the defensive side of the ball like they did. Luckily, as far as to the voice message, Myles Garrett appears to be okay, back at practice today. He's probably shaking off the rust, getting himself back into business. But yeah, overall, this needs to be a more consistent product, on both sides of the ball.
We mentioned the run game. Let's take a look. Pro Football Focus offensive line rankings to date. And the number 1 is the Eagles. Number 2 is the Chiefs. Number 3 is the Browns. And you see Wills, Bitonio, Posick, Teller. Teller, only Brown, Lyman, to allow more than one pressure against the Falcons in Week 4. Group run blocked well. As a whole, has been excellent in both pass protection and in the run game. And yeah, the offensive line has been as good as advertised.
Oh, there's no question about it. And, you have to keep in mind there are some factors here. Jack Conklin not starting the season right away with this team. I think James Hudson, you saw some strides from a second-year player there who maybe the game's starting to slow down a little bit. This is obviously not the center. The Browns had any intentions of being the guy, basically as far as the man in the middle for this team last year. I mean, this year, I should say, all thoughts it was going to be Evan Harris. We get Posick in here. You got him into a system, that strives for offensive linemen. I think it really is a system it's player friendly. Look, you got to be good, but I think the system allows for some opportunities where linemen can enjoy themselves. I mean, I know these guys love to pull, whether it's Batonio, whether it's Teller. Get yourself out there and get an opportunity, basically run over a smaller guy. Posick has been solid in that as well. And Jedrick Wills, everybody wants to seem to get up in arms about Jedrick Wills. And, maybe it's the thought process of, is, the next next left tackle for the Browns, maybe he's going to be here a decade. It's okay if he's not Joe Thomas. It's okay. He can still be a very, very fine version of himself in Jedrick Wills. But this offensive line has been incredible to this point. And it kind of goes to show you that, with a strong offensive line coach and with a system dictated on offensive linemen being put in good position to succeed, it's been really good to this point, even with some moving parts.
Yeah, and it's going to need to continue to be so because that's going to be the foundation here. All right, let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about play calling.
Dad from Youngstown. Kevin Stefanski, I tried to be your best defender out here in Browns world. Man, but you're making it hard. The Browns could very well be 4-0, but they also can very well be 1-3 because of some of the decisions that you make. You've been here 3 years, man. You got the experience to make the right decision. You got the best backs in football. You make it sure that when you go for 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, or whatever, you sneak Jacoby Brissett. How come you can't sneak him down at the goal line, man? Instead of trying to do these exotic plays to act like you're some kind of offensive juggernaut. Don't put your backup quarterback in bad situations. You don't have to have him trying to make comebacks for you. That's Deshaun Watson's job. That's why you paid him $230 million. You put Jacoby Brissett in there to win you games, to manage the games. He's playing well enough to do that. Thank you for taking my call. Love the show. Your thoughts?
Yeah, there's some. I get where he's going. Sometimes I think he's just overthinking it. Too cute, overthinking it. However you want to look at it. And play calling is one of the easiest things to criticize. I'm not a guy that does that, but I think there are times where it's, again, just go with the base play. It's pretty good.
Well, I mean, some of the message that was left here, there's some, up and downs here. It was 4th and 3 from the 4. You're not going to run a QB sneak there. And even as successful as the QB sneak is, but the other thing is, 3rd and inches, obvious, 1 yard. That's never really been Nick Chubb's cup of tea. It's, maybe been something that Kareem Hunt has been a little bit better at. And that's why I maybe had a decision with, not kicking the field goal on the first drive. Is because you had a bunch of chunk plays, and now all you were down here in tight quarters. And all of a sudden, you weren't moving the ball as easily as you were to get yourself inside the 10-yard line. And now you were left with, 4th and 3 from the 4. You don't really have the entire playbook because, the end zone only goes 10 yards deep. So it's not like you had the entire playbook to work with. They called for a play for David Njoku. It wasn't there. And then that's when you're in a little bit of trouble because, Jacoby Brissett, his ad-lib abilities, are definitely limited, even though he had a nice touchdown run on Sunday. But you also have a spot here for Coach Stefanski. He's a little bit of a tough spot here. You're basically trying to find a way for him and Jacoby Brissett to be perfect together in a marriage that they both know has an expiration date come the day Deshaun Watson is ready to go and it's Houston Texans week. So, they're trying to do their best back and forth. I think they thought the defense would play a little bit better than it did on Sunday. So I thought they thought maybe offensively they weren't going to have to go so hard and get themselves in the situation they did. But look, I mean, you tell me you want to get more opportunities for Nick Chubb. I am never, ever going to disagree with that.
Yep. And again, play calling is one of those things. When it works, it's brilliant, and when it doesn't, everybody wants to call the plays. So I get it. Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will continue talking Browns. Look at the defensive side of the ball. Sports4CLE will be back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. This one about one of those young Browns defensive linemen.
Hi, this is Ken Ski from Orlando, Florida, transplant from Cleveland. I know there's enough finger pointing going on this Cleveland Browns team, but did anyone notice the few plays Perrion Winfrey got in? He actually looked pretty darn good taking on double team blocking, and I'm not quite sure what he did that got him in the doghouse, but I can't figure out why they won't play the guy, especially as thin as they were this past week. Anyway, just a thought, just see if anyone else noticed that. Thanks. Enjoy your show.
All right, Jeff, I will defer to you. What did you see from the limited action of Perrion Winfrey?
I think, he looked the best out of the defensive tackles on Sunday. But you could say if he, went to the 40 snap count that maybe some of the other defensive tackles could have been, who knows if that would have changed. I think if you're the Browns here, it's probably going to be a revolving door defensive tackle position week in, week out. If you think somebody played well the week before, he's going to be in line maybe for a lot of playing time early. I don't think any spot is necessarily, solidified on that defensive line. PFF wise, you're talking, what is it? Jordan Elliott and Tommy Togiai, I think they're 125 and 126 out of 126 defensive tackles. So they've certainly had their struggles. You'll get Taven Bryant back. It looks like he was a participant in practice today. But look, right now, Perrion Winfrey was the latest rookie drafted. He did play well last week. I think the things that I also like that I saw from Perrion Winfrey was, he was aggravated, you saw it's like, man, we're getting gassed here. And so when he did get his hands on somebody, the tackle was kind of violent, a little aggravated, a little frustrated. It was the NFL, and basically Atlanta said, here it is. We're going to run the ball on you 11 straight plays. We're not going to stop till you do something about it. And, sometimes when somebody's basically got your soul like that, it's really tough to deal with. But I do think Perrion Winfrey was one of the guys who showed some aggravation and wanted to be a difference maker, and that could be some more reps coming his way. As Perrion works his way hopefully to success on the field and maybe a little bit more trust within the locker room and with the coaching staff.
Yeah, fair enough. John Johnson talked about the Browns' fourth quarter defense and what's needed.
The moments in the game that we get these plays up, can't happen. It's a game-winning drive, or to ice the game, or to even the previous games for a team to come back on us. I think it's just the moment in the game where we can't get those up. But like you said, they're going to make plays, but certain moments we got to tighten up and put teams away.
Since coming into Smash Mouth, did it surprise you guys? Because it just seemed like it was a drastic departure and very successful.
Yeah, we knew they were a running team, but I think I remember that last series, it was kind of just or the second to last, it was just all runs. Usually you don't see that. It's a passing league. So you kind of try to prepare for the pass. But I think we were ready for the scheme, but it's kind of we just got knocked off the ball. We just need better effort, be more physical, and we can work that, throughout the week.
So, Jeff, the question becomes, how concerned are you? And I know Garrett coming back will help. Bryant coming back will help. They're not getting Anthony Walker back, and I think I think he is a bigger part of this run defense than people maybe were giving him credit for.
I think with Anthony Walker, you have a player on the field who's essentially a coach on the field. And, with Jacob Phillips, it's a change here. I mean, you first, start in the league. You're the signal caller. Granted, not all the veteran faces that are part of this defense day in, day out weren't there. But maybe, a situation, first time you can understand. But like I was saying earlier, when you get to that point where this team's running the ball on you 11 straight times, you're going to lose your discipline because basically you're doing anything you can to get a negative play at that point because you want to get it to 2nd and 12 to say, well, you know what? All right, at least they'll throw the ball now. We'll get that break on us. And to John Johnson's point, you saw so many runs. They kept coming. And obviously, as the minutes dwindle off the clock, each one of them gets more important to stop. And you'll have the ultimate gaff, and somebody gets loose for a 40-yard completion. But for them, what they need to do is get themselves out of situations like this, where it's late in the game and the teams are driving on them. They also got to play with more discipline. If you have the running back counter assignment, if he's going to take the ball back to the other side, Jacob Phillips had that opportunity a couple times. He kind of sold out to make the play at the line of scrimmage. Didn't maintain his counter responsibility. Cutback responsibility. They got burnt with that. But at the end there, you're just trying to sell out. Because if you could at least get a negative, you get Atlanta basically to have to change up everything, maybe change their philosophy. They just need to get better with it. Need to get overall better with it. You have two young guys, very aggressive in Jacoby and of course in Jeremiah Usu-Koramoah. Anthony Walker is with them in spirit, and he'll be in their ear all week long going over film. It's great to be aggressive, but it's got to be controlled aggressive, and you got to understand if you're selling out on something, sometimes you're going to give something up, and then you got basically 10 teammates pointing a finger at you.
Yep. And here's the thing. Now you got a different challenge coming in with Justin Herbert. Kevin Stefanski talked about what he has seen from Herbert.
He's evolving. He's getting better. I think young players just get better with more and more reps. I see a young man who sees it very clearly, big, can see it from the pocket, and just can drive every throw, can throw with anticipation and touch. They do a really nice job schematically in getting the ball out of his hands. He doesn't take sacks. And then moving him on the pocket, max protecting, take some shots to some, Mike Williams, as we know, is a very, very good wide receiver. And across the board, Keenan Allen, the tight end. It's a really impressive group.
We've talked obviously about the breakdowns that have happened in the fourth quarter. Do you think focus has anything to do with it, being able to maintain the necessary focus for all four quarters?
It's definitely an important part of this game is playing 60 minutes. I think that's probably goes without saying. I think for us, what we try to do always is letting our team know that you have to lock in for 60 minutes. It's a prerequisite when you're playing NFL football because you just don't know when that play that's going to turn the tide is going to occur. So locking in for 60 minutes is always going to be an important part of this game.
And Jeff, you can do everything right, and that guy's arm, Herbert, can still beat you.
Well, Justin Herbert's a fantastic quarterback, one of the best in the game. And you talk about the fact of his size. He's a typical guy to bring down. You saw last week where the Browns, missed sack opportunities against Marcus Mariota. Marcus may be a little bit more athletic, but I'm not selling Justin Herbert short in that respect. He's very athletic at his size. But also you're talking about bringing down 6'6", 240. Getting some reinforcements in this week will certainly help. But Justin Herbert, just a special talent. And I think the key for him is not a lot has changed in his time with the Chargers. It's still Mike Wilson. Mike Williams. It's still Keenan Allen. It's still a big, healthy dose of Austin Eckler, getting tight ends involved. So it allows, for Herbert, you can do more within the offense because you're not worried about any newness. Everybody already knows each other. They already have a good relationship with each other. So when you bring in different ideas, these guys can see, the path for it to come to fruition because what success you have with these guys. We know it's a handful, seeing Justin Herbert. Obviously, him and Baker had a nice duel, both of them through the air last year. But Justin Herbert, if he was in any other division, maybe a division that did not have Patrick Mahomes, he'd be talked about a lot more. But I don't think anybody is, underselling or isn't aware of just how talented he is.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to take one more time out. We will be back talking more Browns Chargers. Sports for CLE will be back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jacoby Brissett talked about what he sees on tape from this Chargers defense.
I still think they have a really good defense. Obviously, he's one of their better players, but I think those guys still play really well, play really hard. It's a system that those guys know very well, yeah. So we got a tough task. I think they got a lot of ball hawks on their in their secondary, including their linebackers. A lot of guys that can make plays on the ball. So obviously being good on my part and making good decisions and making sure I'm not putting the team in the offense in harm's way.
And Jeff, he was talking about Joey Bosa being out, but Khalil Mack still being there. So there's still a guy that gets after the quarterback.
No question about it, Dave. And this is, if you didn't know the Chargers that well, Joey Bosa's out. That's great. They acquired Khalil Mack in the offseason. So that's going to be a good test for Jack Conklin. Most of the time, Khalil Mack does most of his work up against the right tackle. I'm assuming they'll probably rotate him a little bit this week. But it's a strong defense. Stanford Samuels Jr. in the secondary. Derwin James, just an absolute freak. The guy's built like a linebacker, but was one of the best safeties in the business. It's a solid group, but they do give up points. Houston Texans put up points on them last week. Houston Texans had well over 150 yards rushing against them last week. But there's not a lot of newness to the Chargers defense. There is some, but this is a team the Browns scored 42 against last year. As broken and busted as that Browns offense was last year, they did put 42 on the Chargers last year. So I think there's some confidence that you think some of the things that you did last year, Nick Chubb averaging over 7 yards a carry, Kareem Hunt was over 60 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was David Njoku's best day in the NFL. There's plays to be had against this team. You have to be disciplined. You certainly can't have, Khalil Mack ruin your day. And let's not get into the situation of, asking, Jacoby Brissett to finish off a 2-minute drive to win a game. The 2 times you kind of had to do that in the Jets game, and obviously, Sunday in Atlanta, it's not where he's the most comfortable. I think he's so much better in just an normal drive atmosphere than he is in a hurried up style. So hopefully Browns can, keep playing in situations like that. And in a game like this, and I'll say it last week, you got 3 points. Take them. Take the 3 points.
I'm with you. I am absolutely with you. ESPN's predicting Week 5 upsets. Dan Graziano takes the Browns +3 over the Chargers. Browns are all about running the ball. Chargers have allowed 282 rushing yards over their last 2 games. Cleveland's strength on the offense plays to the Chargers' weakness on defenses. I think it's a spot for the Browns to bounce back. And that's kind of dovetailing on what you were saying. This Chargers run defense has been gashed. Not only the last 2 weeks, they've been gashed regularly. So main thing is Browns can't turn over the ball, and they need to control the time of possession. Keep that high-powered offense enjoying the lakefront on the sidelines.
No question. And you have a couple other factors going into this. We'll get it real quick on the defensive side of the ball, but starting here on the offense. Whenever you talk about an opponent the Browns are going up against and there are issues with stopping the run game, keep in mind, what are the things we have just talked about here? The number 3 offensive line in the NFL is the Cleveland Browns. Nobody, and I'll say there is no better running back in the NFL right now than Nick Chubb. So teams have issues stopping the run going into these games. And then you say, well, it's the Browns offensive line and it's Nick Chubb. So that should amplify those issues. I think with the secondary improving their play, getting Miles back, getting Taven Bryant back, we'll see where Jadeveon Clowney is at if he can make it back this week, because it would be obviously ideal if they could get him back this week. But maybe we're starting to get a little bit closer to the balance that this team needs, where the defense can play well in 2 phases, the offense can hopefully play well in 2 phases, and things start to work a little bit better for him. But I think they're going to put up a good show this week.
I agree. And the defense has to. I mean, you're running out of time with the defense because this is the beginning of a whole lot of offenses that put points on the board. So that defense needs to get after it.
There's no question, Dave. Way too much talent on that side of the ball. Look, you have to get after the quarterback a little bit more. I think they're starting to tackle better. I think the communication is improving. But you got a whole bunch of first and second round picks on this defense, a whole bunch of day one picks on this defense, day two picks on this defense. These guys got to start playing up to their abilities and start playing as one.
Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
Thank you, Dave. Have yourself a great afternoon.
You too. Jeff Lloyd, make sure you catch him. Locked On Browns podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We want your predictions for Browns Chargers. Call the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Leave them. We will play them for you on Friday. Have a great night. See you tomorrow on Sports for CLE.